to the 17th edition of Jeep Devs. A couple of updates on our social media channels. We are discontinuing the use of the meetup platform and we are replacing it with Eventbrite. So in case that you are following us on Meetup for notifications about our events and reminders, please use either Facebook or look us on Eventbrite. We have a very new and shiny website. So we are very excited about this launch after having the domain name for, I think, 1.5 years. So finally, someone got very bored on the lockdown and decided to actually go ahead and create the site. And it's not actually one of the many devs that we have on the team. It's actually, it was our marketing specialist, Elena. So thank you for putting the effort in getting this done. I invite you guys to check it out. You can find all the details and information there. You can find information about our previous meetups, slides, recordings, pictures. So check it out. And let's give Helena a warm round of applause for this. Thank you, Helena.
Amazing job, Helena.
Was it Joy also?
That's true. Joe did a lot of work as well. Nice one, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Very hard to remember the website. Yeah.
Okay, so check it out, guys. And Girls in Tech Gibraltar is doing social media tech talk. Yeah, thank you, Vitas. We know you're a big supporter of Girls in Tech. So this event takes place on 10th of June. If you want to leverage social media for your goals and your purposes, check this event out. I heard that they have a really good speaker, digital strategist, which I believe that it's on the event today.
Yeah, that's
Mark?
right. So Mark's here today.
Yeah. I don't know if he wants to share some quick notes about the event, or you can check the details of the event on the Girls in Tech social media.
Yeah, so if you visit our Facebook or our LinkedIn, we've got some links in there. But basically, it's a good summary of getting up to speed on social media and learning a bit more about how you can leverage it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Christina. And another special thing for today's meetup, we are giving away 4 Amazon vouchers, total worth 100 euros. So during the break, Helena is gonna spin the wheel of fortune. So stay tuned for this one. You might be one of the 4 winners. And following our pattern of having meetups the last Thursday of each month, the next meetup is 25th of June. You can already mark it in your calendars. We are very pleased to have a very special speaker from Romania, Andrei Postolache. A few years ago, we worked in the same company. He was delivery unit manager for around 300 employees. And I've seen him having a massive impact, both in the company and in the IT community in my hometown. And I believe that much of the success of this company and business unit it's due to his leadership style with communication and influencing behavior and driving the culture. So yeah, I'm very excited. Right now, Andrei is is having its own company, which are providing trainings, workshop, consultancy on various topics. I think the main one is leadership. I invite you to check his website, Introspecials. You can find there a lot of free resources in blog posts or in YouTube videos. As well, I encourage you to go and read his book. I read it myself and it's amazing. It has like tons of techniques, strategy. It explains his leadership philosophy, and it's like packed with real life examples. You can check the book on Amazon or on his website. And Andrei is gonna talk about clear and assertive communication in business and aviation. I believe that from time to time, each of us struggle with the communication topics. So myself, I'm really excited to see what I can learn from his talk. So please help me welcoming, and let's give Andrei a massive warm of applause.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for those very kind words, Amalia. You made me, I was thinking, who's this great guy you're talking about? I don't know him. So, thank you so much for welcoming me and inviting me and having me. I will need to share my screen at some point, but I guess I don't know if I can do that, or if you need to give me some.
You can do that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So let me just tell you a bit about myself before I share my screen. So my name is Andrei, and I started, my first real job was in 2001 as a software developer, basically. And I had contact with computers way before that, because basically I spent my entire high school dabbling about in the informatics laboratory of the high school. I didn't do pretty much anything else, but my first real job was in 2001. I was a developer, and I was a complete antisocial personality. I didn't like to speak to anyone. I was afraid of people. I didn't like communication. I hated meetings. I did not want to do anything but look into a computer screen and write code. And that's what I did for quite a few years, until one day in 2005, when basically by accident, more than anything else, I was put in front of a situation where I had to talk and speak to people. And I had to hold a technical presentation in front of about 20 colleagues. So it wasn't a big deal. It was like a very pragmatic conversation about a technical thing to colleagues. I wasn't going on a stage and talking to strangers about something. And I was so afraid of it, and I was so scared of it, and I couldn't say anything, and I don't know what I did. I forgot what I did. That I made the decision that I will try to figure out this people things. And ever since then, I'm trying to do that. So I got into management at some point, and I did a whole bunch of management in different ways. I did a lot of client work. 2015, I left my job. I started my own company with my business partner, and now we have this consultancy agency, Introspecials. We do leadership and business development, consultancy, and training. And so communication is a topic that I really, really like, because I had my struggles with it, like I told you, and I think it's very important, and I think I can speak a lot from my own experience and the experience of people I worked with, people I had in my teams, and a whole bunch of companies I've consulted. So I'm just going to share a slide now, and I'm going to go through some ideas, and I'm going to say some things, but please interrupt me at any point, ask any questions. I would love it if it becomes a conversation. So I can talk a lot, but don't let me do that. All right. How do I? Okay. Just 1 second, because I installed an update to Zoom, and I need to give it permissions again to share my screen, I think. How do I do that? click the button again.
Any IT in the call?
Anyone use computers?
Yeah.
So
So I think
I mean,
click the share screen button, then choose the top left one and click share. And I think that's it because there are no restrictions.
yeah, no, it's one of those system permissions things. Like I did an update and it doesn't recognize it anymore, and I need to give it permissions. And I am in the right screen. I just don't find it. Oh, I think this is fine. Let's try now.
Paolo,
Still
I
not
see
working.
you those t-shirts. Thank you. Thank you.
Andrei, check if there's any pop-up hidden behind any window.
Yeah, that's an idea. If not, I'll just do it without the slides. I don't really need the slides. They're good looking slides, but I don't need them. No, there's nothing. So let me just tell you. I'll open the slides and I'll look at them. I have 3 words on every slide anyway. So it's not like there's a lot to see. So basically, first thing I want to say is communication. I call communication the swimming ability of the business world. So I think that accepting very specific situations and very specific jobs, you cannot really do your job to your fullest potential if you don't communicate. Because whatever you do, you have to work with other people, you depend on other people depend on you, you give a deadline, then the deadline changes, you need to update people, you need to negotiate, you need to give good news, bad news, and all that kind of stuff. So you're just not going to be able to value your technical skills completely if you don't have some communication skills. And more than that, if you don't have, if you're not comfortable with your communication skills, then you're also going to be frustrated frequently. And I see that a lot in a lot of people. I don't know if that's the case with you, obviously, but a lot of people that I work with, they have ideas, they have things they want to say, they're in that meeting or something. They're just about to open their mouth, but they're too nervous to do it or too shy to do it, or don't think it's such an important point, or don't think they have all the arguments or whatever. And then they don't do it, and then they regret it. And that happens again and again and again. So it's a source of frustration as well, if you're not comfortable enough to communicate in your day-to-day work environments. So in a way, that's going to be the focus of my talk today. So I won't focus on, unless you want me to, on the kind of communication where you want to do that for a job. Like if you want to be like a professional communicator and present things and go on a stage or something, that's its own thing. But the day-to-day thing is I think equally important, maybe more important. And I have a few very basic ideas about communication, which sound simple and are simple, but if you do them, it's gonna help you a lot. The first one is own your communication. It's the biggest mistake people do. People don't take communication seriously. They treat it like an afterthought of real work, so to say. So you do things, you write things, you work on things, and then in between you sort of communicate, and you don't own it. You don't have clear messages, you don't have direct messages. There's so many people that don't ask the questions that they want to ask for whatever reason, don't say the things that they want to say, don't complain about the things that they want to complain, and they just hope that maybe someone else is going to ask the question, or maybe things are going to sort out by themselves, and that rarely works. So I think owning your communication, just whatever is in your mind that you think you'd like other people to know, you have to take responsibility and make sure they hear it. And this ties into the transmitter accountability principle that I always like to follow in business. So I don't know if you've heard about this, but one way to look at communication is this difference between transmitter accountability and receiver accountability. So who's responsible for the successful communication? Is the person that starts the communication responsible to make themselves understood? or is the person that is being addressed responsible to understand what the other person wants from them? And it's a really important thing, and it's a cultural thing as well. I mean, generally speaking, different cultures, different countries have different preferences. Transmitter accountability cultures encourage very clear communication, very direct communication, assertive communication, upfront communication, and repeated communication. So basically, in transmitter accountability culture, you are encouraged and you are told you need to make yourself understood. It's never an excuse to say, I told them, but they didn't hear it, or they didn't understand it, or they didn't pay attention, or that means you just didn't tell it well enough. You didn't repeat it, you didn't insist, you didn't persist. In receiver accountability cultures, especially when it comes to hierarchy, like when you talk to people in positions of power, it's a much more oblique and indirect kind of communication and more nuanced kind of communication. And you sort of hint at problems, and your seniors should figure out what you're trying to say. If you want to look at this geographically, typically most of Western Europe and North America is transmitter accountability, and the Eastern countries are more receiver accountabilities, and a country like Romania is right smack in the middle of that. So it's very interesting because in Romania, for example, we struggle with this because our cultural background is very receiver accountability, but the business context we work in, especially in IT, tends to be transmitter accountability. So that can lead to a lot of frustration because a person that's not used to being clear and direct and upfront will sort of be upset about some things and will sort of hint to some manager that some things are not as they should be, or act in a certain way, expecting that other people are going to pick up on those cues. And those people may not pick up on those cues, and this person is going to be very frustrated that nobody's fixing their problem. So the thing I say to people is that in business, I always encourage transmitter accountability. In business, it's always on you to make yourself heard. There's no hoping that others are going to read between your lines. It may happen once in a while, but it's a fortunate accident. It's not going to be a sustainable way of communicating. And I personally treat all my communication like little projects. Well, not all of my communication, like the more important communication. Like I think what I want from who I want, what I want them to hear, what I want them to respond, what idea do I want them to entertain, and I sort of plan and work around that, and I take it very seriously. And I never get upset.
Yeah, I have one question.
Please.
Do you apply this for every aspect of your life or just work?
I applied for every aspect of my life, but I'm most dedicated to it in work. So in work, it's like 100%. In personal life, I also prefer to be clear, but with very good friends or with your life partner, sometimes, you know, some degree of ambiguity or whatever has a different meaning in there, or it's a different kind of relationship. But yes, I prefer clarity. So for example, when I organize going out for a beer with friends, which doesn't happen frequently now, but you know, and we chat in a group chat and somebody says, okay, so let's see, what about tomorrow at 6 o'clock? And some people just don't say anything. They don't say yes, they don't say no. So I don't like that, for example. I just say yes or no. So they sort of leave it hanging in a way, in a kind of ambiguity type of thing. When you want to go out with friends and have a beer, that's whatever. But in business, that can get bad pretty quickly in professional context.
That's very, very interesting what you're saying. We have here in Gibraltar, I think we have a very special context that we have people working here from every country. So we are like a mix of cultures. So we have a cluster of maybe British people, we have a cluster of Spanish, Romanian, Polish, whatever, you name it. So it's very interesting dynamic, and I personally have experienced this thing that you're saying about receiver and about transmitter and receiver accountability, because I know that some people, for example, when giving feedback, they want to not name things very clear and direct, prefer maybe to hint at it.
Yeah.
So
So
maybe, yeah, maybe
Sorry,
my
go.
question, I don't know if you have any advice on how to close the gap a little bit.
Yep, sure. I mean, I think the key thing with communication, like every other cultural thing, so we talk about corporate culture, we're not, maybe no, we're not a corporation, like the culture of the organization, it needs to be explicit. So if you work in company X with people from, doesn't matter where, it doesn't matter what their personal preferences are, it doesn't matter what culture they come from, you're a team, you come together and you agree on these things. How do we communicate? How do we make decisions? Do we value being punctual or do we value being creative? I don't know. So for example, decision making is another topic. It's not the topic of today's conversation, but how does a team make decision? Do we want consensus? Do we want a majority? Do we want to vote on it? Do we have a leader that makes the final decision? That is a conversation that every team should have. How do we make decisions? Another conversation would be, how do we want to communicate? It doesn't matter your culture or whatever, that's fine, that's great, but together we agree to communicate in a certain way with each other at work. How do we want to communicate with each other? So what do we value, for example? Do we value quick responses when we ask for help from each other? Do we value clarity? Do we value feedback? Do we value, and I think those discussions should happen, and once you agree on that, you should stick to that. And in that way, you set up a set of norms that are applicable to your team, to your company, to your department, regardless of whatever cultural background each of us comes from, which might be different. And of course, everyone has to be comfortable with those, but once we agree on them, we follow them until we decide to change them. But we discuss about changing them. So if I don't like a way in which things are happening, I don't just stop doing that. I bring up the point that we should change it, but while it's being used, I follow it. Another thing about communication is that communication between people, between computers, it might be different. Communication between people is very, very, very error prone. I don't have any statistics on it, but sometimes I observe conversations and I have a feeling that more than 50% of what's being said is not being understood by the other people. Sometimes maybe more, sometimes maybe less. So in our head, it all makes sense. When we talk, it all seems very clear. And we think that we've said it, therefore the job is done. But communication is very, very error prone. So repeating is really important. Repeating in the same conversation, repeating across different conversations. If there's important things, so just repeat it, say it in a different way, try to get an idea if the other people heard it and understood it, try to get an idea if they agree with it. It is a very error-prone process. It's not a perfect process.
I have a question as well, on this topic. How do you think the language itself influences the communication? I mean, if different languages, they have different ways of saying things depending on context, so it might influence the speech itself, I guess.
I've read some things about this, and I also have a bit of a personal experience. I've read that when we talk in a different language, or we think in a different language, we actually tend to think differently sometimes. So the language you use influences the way in which you think. And I feel that as well. I mean, so for example, I think I feel much more able to be flexible in the solutions and negotiations I have in English than Romanian. English seems like a much more open-ended language to me than Romanian. it has more words and it's more nuanced and it has more, it's a language that doesn't restrict the meaning of words, I don't know how to say, in a way that Romanian is it's more precise in some shapes, ways, or forms. So I sometimes actually see two Romanian people working in the same company, and for example, when they have something more difficult to say or more tough, more like a more constructive feedback, they switch to English, like because it feels less personal, less aggressive if they give the feedback in English to the other Romanian person right there. So I think that matters, yes. When you have people, so usually people talk in English in companies, and not all of them have English as their first language. And then I think what's recommended is that you use a relatively standard vocabulary, rather say things in using a few more words, but being clearer than using all kind of shortcuts and things that only native speakers might understand. So just try to be even more clear, speak in a simpler way, in a sense, I think. I hope that was your question. I hope I didn't answer a different question.
No, yeah, that's okay.
So to make sure people understand you, they hear you and they understand you, because that's the point of communication. They might not agree with you, that's something else. But the point of communication is to be heard and understood. Then if they agree or not, it's stage 2 of that. So you own your communication. You are assertive about your communication, and assertive communication is one of these concepts that I think everybody has heard. It's a very general concept. It's the closest thing to a bit of a magic bullet in communication. Like assertiveness allows you to say everything you have to say, ask for everything you want to ask without looking like an asshole whatsoever. So assertive communication is the way to be aggressive in a way without being aggressive. Because sometimes we have this false conflict, like either I'm not saying anything, but I'm upset about something, but I'm just keeping it to myself and I'm frustrated, or I sort of blow out and I say something that I might regret. But there's a middle way, and that's the assertive communication. And assertive communication is just simply stating what you think, what you need, what you want, without ignoring or attacking or not respecting the other person's needs or wants. So rather than saying something like, this is wrong, I can do it better, say it like, I'm looking at this thing and it's not producing the outcomes that I would expect it to produce or that I would need, and I think we should discuss about how we can change it so it does that. So I say what I have to say, but I don't turn it into a sort of personal argument. And assertive communication is important. It's really important. Without assertive communication, it's difficult to do almost anything else. When it comes to feedback, because we talked about feedback, I'm a big fan of a concept called radical candor. There's even a book called Radical Candor. Some people call it radical honesty, which is basically just say it. Most people, that traditional Ben Horowitz, I don't know if you read the book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things. Ben Horowitz, one of the founders of Netscape and Anderson Horowitz investment fund, he calls it the shit sandwich. Like say something nice, say what you have to say, and then say something nice again. It's like shit in the middle and a half sandwich around it. People see you when you do that. They smell it. It's fake. Just say what you have to say. If you want to say something bad, I mean just give some negative feedback or constructive feedback, just say it. And say it in a way that's not personal, it's not angry, but just say it. And it's your opinion, of course, they may see things differently, but you're talking about your opinion. So a thing about feedback, if I give you feedback, I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about me. So I'm telling you how something has happened to me and how that impacted me, and I don't like how it impacted me, and I'm asking you to basically change something so I don't have to go through that again. But I have nothing with you as an individual. I don't care what you think. I don't care what you like. I don't care what you believe in. Just don't step on my toes, basically. That's what you're asking in feedback. So whenever you give someone feedback, you're not telling them how to be or what to do. You're just telling them how to help you, basically. It's weird when you do it the first time. And if you haven't done it, and you start doing it, first time people are going to look at you like, what's wrong with you today? But if you keep doing it, and if you keep doing it in a way that's honest, people are just going to realize that that's how you are. You're being direct about these things. You're being fair, and that's okay. And they will, most of them, appreciate it in time. So Radical Candor is a book I recommend, written by a lady whose name I forgot now. I always forget the name of authors most of the times. She used to work at Google, and now I think she's something at Facebook or the other way around.
I think Vitas is very happy that you mentioned this book is one of his favorite books.
The only book which I read over this year, but it was amazing.
Yeah.
Last year.
A good book. So she has a story about when she was working somewhere, and she hired a person in her team, and that the individual wasn't performing, but she was maybe I'm not seeing it correctly, maybe I don't want to demotivate him by telling him he's not performing so quickly, let's give him another chance, and so enough, a year passes by, and she realizes she has someone in her team that is not performing, and she's suffering because of that as a team leader, because she has to do his work and all that kind of stuff. And also she's not doing him any favors because he thinks he's doing okay, he's sort of happy with his job, and now she has to basically fire him, coming as a surprise to him. It would have been much better to just give him very direct feedback from the beginning, and that would have helped a lot.
Can I say something? I heard that in a free podcast, actually. She telling that story.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, there is a free podcast. Yeah.
I think I hear another voice as well somewhere, like
TV.
Oh, TV. There's another thing I like to say. It's from a book called Extreme Ownership, written by a bunch of soldiers. And there's a guy there saying that your duty to the team is greater than your duty to any member of the team. So no matter how much you like every person you work with, and how much you want to protect them and be kind to them, and that's great. If that contradicts your ability to protect the whole team, then you need to choose the team over the individual. So you need to give the hard feedback to the individual, basically. That's where you end up. Now, more specifically, in terms of how do I make sure I'm understood? When I talk, when I have a voice conversation and I explain something, or I am being explained something, I use a technique called playback. So playback is basically, if you're telling me something and you're speaking for 10 minutes and you're making a pitch about whatever, I repeat that back to you after you're done, much briefer, like in a minute or 2 minutes. I'll summarize it. I'll say something like, so basically, if I understand correctly, what you're saying is that blah, blah, blah. And that, if I get it right, that gives you confidence that I got it right. I have confidence that I got it right. And if I got it wrong, great. I understand what I got wrong. Playback is great. If I talk in writing, like I send an email, for example, I try to be as clear as possible. If I need to ask for confirmation, ask for confirmation. I end the email with, can you please confirm that you can do this or you can do that? If it's an even bigger thing, it becomes a little plan. Like if I want to convince some people of something, I want to get some budget or whatever. It has multiple stages. So I will have an initial conversation, or maybe I will send an initial email. I will get agreement that I will set a meeting where I will present ideas. 2 or 3 days before that meeting, I will set some slides. Then at the meeting, I will say some things. Then after the meeting, I will send some meeting notes. Then 3 days later, I'll come back and maybe ask them if they have any follow-up questions, or I'll call some individuals from that group and ask them individually what do they think about it. So there's a whole bunch of things that you can do just to maximize your chances of being understood. They're not rocket science. The whole idea is to pay attention to it and basically just do it. Active listening is another technique that is good for basically hearing people. This is on the side of the listener now. Because sometimes what happens is that, for example, you get into a meeting where a decision needs to be taken, and you go into a meeting like a lawyer. Like, I have my case to make, and you have your case to make, and he has his case to make, and she has her case to make, and let's see who wins, who has the better arguments, who has the better whatever. And I don't think that's a constructive way of doing it usually. I think I like to go into meetings trying to forget that I have a preference. I'm just there along for the ride. So let's see what people have to say. Let's see how we can think creatively. Let's see if any new ideas come up. And then when somebody speaks, try to literally don't just be quiet waiting for your turn, but or just making mental notes like, you said that, so I'm going to contradict you with that. just listen. Just imagine you're sitting on their side of the table and you're just curious like a child trying to understand what they're trying to say. And that will help you understand them better. You don't have to agree with them. You can still disagree with them, but it will help you understand them better, what they have to say. Another thing I say is an email without a deadline is like a joke without a punchline. It doesn't have to be an email, it can be anything. But basically there's two kinds of communication in this world. There's the for your information kind of communication, where I'm just broadcasting some stuff, I'm not expecting an action. And there's the kind of communication where I expect an action. Like I contact you because I want something from you. I want you to give me an answer, some information, I want you to do something, whatever. So if I expect an action, then I need to talk about timeframes, because actions without timeframes, that's just not going to happen. And whenever I send an email like this, or I have a communication like this, I have a question in my mind, and the question is, who needs to do what by when? And my email or my words have to answer the question, who needs to do what by when? So I'm always addressing one person. I'm not addressing groups, because if you address groups, like if you send an email to 5 people or a team and I call them someone please do something emails, you get into a phenomenon called diffusion of responsibility. It's a social behavior that the more people you ask for help, the less likely is that any of them is going to help you. That applies to, hope you'll never be in that situation, but if you're ever drowning, don't just yell, someone help me, but pick a random person and say, hey, you in the red shirts, help me. And you're more likely to get help from that person than just addressing 10 or 20 people at the same time. And that applies in business context as well. Diffusion of responsibility is when multiple people are addressed, each of them feels like, maybe it's not me that should answer this. So address someone, like name them, hey, whoever. Then very clearly say what you need, and then say by when you need it. Always give people deadlines. By giving people deadlines, I don't mean that you may have no power to enforce those deadlines. They may be absolutely free to ignore you. They may be absolutely free to say that they cannot do it. But you're helping yourself and you're helping them if you tell them clearly by when you need it. So if I want something and I say I want it and I don't say by when, nobody wins. I may not get it and the other person doesn't know how to help me. So always tell people when you need things, and it's not impolite to do that. So who needs to do what by when? If that question is not answered, then maybe you can write the email a little bit better. I also have the hot cake principle. So the hot cake principle says that when you bake a cake, the cake has to be good, right? But it has to be on time as well, because if it comes too late, it's no use to anyone. And it's the same in communication. It's the just enough principle. It's the just in time. It's the lean thinking. So if you write an email in 2 paragraphs that explains 80% of the problem in 20 minutes, do that, rather than spending 2 hours writing 3 pages trying to explain every little scenario. Because in 99% of the cases, the brief email, the quick email will be more useful. It will get there faster, it will be easier to understand, and it will get the job done. And if once in a while it's not enough information, people can ask for more detail, and that's just fine. So communication, don't overcook communication, don't over-engineer. Like, I need to make sure, I need to prepare. If you want to propose something to your team or management or whatever, don't just develop like this full script. So if they ask this, I'm going to say that. And then if they ask this, I'm going to say that. And if they ask this, I'm going to do this. And if he does that, then I will do this. And then Just have some basic idea and just put it out on the table and see where it goes, see where it leads. That's usually fine. Don't overdo it. When it comes to meetings, meetings are also very important. There's a lot of bad meetings. There's a lot of bad email in the world, but it's not because emails or meetings are bad, but because people use them in a bad way. I think there's two kinds of meetings, and I call one kind the blue sky meeting, and I call the other kind the other kind the decision meeting. Blue sky meeting are meetings like strategy meetings and brainstorming meetings and meetings where you ask why not, what else could we do, how can we reinvent things. And in those kind of meetings, they're usually, the structure is very loose and all kind of wild ideas are welcomed. And if you get off topic, it's okay most of the times, as long as it's relatively around the general idea, because you want to be creative. And if you have one of these meetings and nothing specific comes out of it, that's okay, because these are how these meetings are. But most meetings are decision meetings. They're meetings where you're trying to make decisions and end up with a list of actions from them. And these kind of meetings need an agenda and need someone to facilitate them and to make sure people stick to that agenda. And they need to be focused, and you need to be on time, and you need to agree on those actions, and those actions need to answer the question, who needs to do what by when. So you wouldn't imagine how many meetings I've seen, management meetings, like management teams in big companies. They would meet, they would talk about stuff, they would debate, they would passionately argue, and then they would sort of, okay, so they're just about to get up and leave. But there was no point when someone said, okay, so who's gonna do what, by when? Because if nobody does anything, nothing is gonna happen, right? It's just group therapy, basically. So there needs to be that moment where I said, who is gonna do what by next week, and come up with an update by next week. Someone needs to say, I will do something, or be nominated, but ideally it should be voluntary. So always look for those things. If you feel like you're talking and you're talking and you're talking and nothing happens, it's probably because of this. There's no clear agenda, or if there's an agenda, people don't stick to it and nobody brings them back to the agenda, or there's no actions. So without these three things, yes, you can have a lot of meetings that you feel like you're not accomplishing much in them. But if you have these things, then you can accomplish quite a lot. Have you heard about storytelling as a business technique? Okay. So storytelling is this idea, and there's, of course, books about it, that people are more receptive to stories rather than just information presented as a list of facts. And there's a very simple way to make a story out of anything. So when you're explaining something, you can make it like a story. And that simple way is called the 3-act structure. So it's a theater technique. It's a movie script technique. It's like a 3-act structure. Everything has 3 acts. Act 1 is the setup. Act 2 is the confrontation. Act 3 is the resolution. So if you think about, I don't know, Lord of the Rings, Act 1, the setup is Frodo doing whatever he was doing. It's like the peaceful world with the hobbits minding their own business. Act 2 confrontation is evil comes and wants to destroy that, and Act 3 resolution is whatever ends up, who wins. So if you're explaining any kind of situation, or if you're proposing anything, you can do it like a story. And you can start with Act 1, which is the setup, which is the existing situation. Like, the current situation is this. We are a team of 4 people, and we need to deliver this project by the date of whatever. We've run the numbers, and we need an extra member in the team. That's the setup. But we're getting into the confrontation being the decision that we have to make. So we need to hire an extra person, because without the extra person, we will not be able to blah, blah, blah. And then we get into resolution, which is, so I propose that you approve that we start hiring for an extra person. And you've structured it in this 3-act way, which is natural to read, it's easy to read, it's an easy way to go through a pitch, basically, of almost anything.
Do you have some examples where you use this and it actually was more beneficial than something else maybe that didn't work?
I think I use it a lot. I mean, it's one of those things that I use on a day-to-day basis in very small things. So it's not a technique that I only apply like on the major occasions, but even when I'm trying to, for example, send a proposal to a client that asked me to send a proposal, if I explain how I designed the training, for example, I will try to explain it, if I can, as a short story. What do I mean by that? I'm not just going to have bullet points and tables. I'm just going to say, something like, so I looked at your situation, we had that conversation, and you told me those things. And then I thought about those things and I interpreted them this way. And my thinking is that this is what you need. And I think this solution could work for these reasons. So I propose we do this. So it's a bit of a story following roughly the 3-act structure, rather than just saying, this is the way to do it, and give them a lot of information, but which is not structured in that way.
Mm-hmm.
You can also make it personal. I mean, if it's something that's important to you, it's fine to make it personal in business to a degree. So it is that vulnerability idea. Like, if you really care about something, if you're really concerned about something, a project failing or a product not succeeding or whatever, if you've worked a lot and you're personally invested and you want to see it be okay, it's okay to admit that. And it's okay to admit that you're a bit afraid about something or a bit personally invested in something. It's not an issue. Just maybe don't do it all the time, because then it's going to lose its impact. And I'm not saying you do it artificially. I'm just saying it's okay to admit if that's the case. You don't have to pretend like you're this perfect, rational professional that doesn't feel anything and it's all driven by the facts.
And coupling this with active listening that you mentioned, does it happen often that maybe you thought about this structure and had an idea or a solution in mind, and in the setup or in the confrontation, I don't know, things changed or someone gave another perspective, and in the end solution is something different than you actually thought initially?
Yep, happens all the time. It took me a while to train myself to be like that, because when I was younger, I used to be very in love with my ideas. So I would be like a technical architect or whatever, and I would go into a technical discussion and I knew exactly what the right answer was. The only problem was making all the other plebs understand it. And I would be very argumentative and very difficult to talk to. But I've trained myself. It took a while, and now I think I'm reasonably capable to listen to people, and I don't have that sort of ego thing, like it has to be my idea or my solution or my. And I'm actually happy when people come up with ideas and solutions, because if they come up with ideas and solutions, they're more likely to own them and actually deliver on them than on my ideas.
That is a big problem for developers, the ego. Sometimes we try to put our solution ahead.
Ego, and I also think there's a bit of a fallacy in because developers work so much with very precise things that they overestimate the applicability of absolute truth. They think that almost anything in life can be researched enough and we can reach the one true conclusion. And that's much less the case than we think it is. So a lot of decisions in a company, like management decisions, investment decisions, they boil down to, yes, we looked at some data and some numbers and whatever, and we made sure we're not doing something completely stupid, but fundamentally, this is what we want to do. And people don't say that because it's not very politically correct or they're not very confident in themselves. But arguments rarely change anyone's mind. about anything. So when I talk to someone and they're saying like, I'm a very open-minded person, I listen to arguments, I know that they probably would be very like difficult to talk to, unless we talk about actual math and numbers and performance data or whatever. Everything is an opinion. Everything is tied with our preferences and our personality and our biases and our so let's just accept that and just accept the fact that we are individuals and we should agree on something that we can all agree on, and that's it. Let's not stop looking for the absolute truth in everything. Business is not about absolute truth. It's about doing something, and then learning from that and doing something hopefully a bit better, and so on and so on. So I've given up trying to convince people about many things. Basically, I do my thing. I say my thing. I suggest things. I highlight things. If I convince anyone of anything through my example, that's fine, that's great. But if someone says, another thing is that I don't, when I'm talking a topic, you have to keep your eye on the ball, right? So if I talk to you about the design of whatever product, and in that conversation you mention something else, unrelated, that I violently disagree with, I'm not gonna take debate. I don't want to talk that. That's not what I came to talk. I don't care that you believe that thing. That's not why I'm here. So we don't have to agree on everything. We have to agree on this thing that we agreed that we have to agree on. So just, I think that kind of attitude sometimes helps quite a bit.
You mentioned that when you were younger, you were very attached to your ideas, and now you're not so attached anymore. I'm wondering, for a person that maybe, I don't know, has a big ego or takes self-esteem from the fact that he always thinks about good solutions or that he's always right or things like that. What would you advise him or her to do to train this active listening and letting go of ideas, attachment?
So, yeah, there's many things you can do. You have to first be aware of it, of the problem, and you have to say that, yes, I want to change this in myself. If you're not aware of it, and if you don't decide that you want to change it, of course, nothing will happen. So you have to have the vocabulary, you have to have these concepts about how the mind works, even rudimentary, so you can analyze your own thought processes. Okay, so you've realized somehow, or somebody has told you, and you've actually listened, that you have this issue, for example, and you decide that, okay, I want to be more, a better listener, and I want to be more receptive to other people's ideas. It's great that you did this, but you probably have 5, 10, 20 years of experience of not doing that. So to change that habit is not easy. So then you get into habit formation and habit changing. And if you want to read the book about this, is that great book. It's called Habits, or The Way We Do Things, or something like that. But basically, for example, I struggled with this for 6 months. I made the decision that I don't want to be that argumentative person anymore. If you ask me, Andrei, how do you want to be? I said, I want to listen. I want to be open to other people's ideas. And then I would get into a meeting and things would heat up and somebody would say something and I would just lose control. And an hour later, I did it again. And then I would feel bad and then I would repeat that and I would repeat that. And I just repeated it to myself for many, many meetings until I internalized it and it became a new habit. And some people call this like fake it until you make it. Like if you want to do 5 push-ups in the morning and you're not used to doing 5 push-ups in the morning, you're not going to like doing 5 push-ups in the morning. So you just have to do it, no matter how you feel about it. And if you do it for, on average, 60 days, I think, I actually did the math, continuously, then it will become a habit and it will become second nature. So first thing, you have to realize it, then you have to want to change, but then you have to work at that change. And it can take quite a while. And you can use all kinds of tricks. Like if you want to remind yourself that you want to listen more, I don't know, take this with you in every meeting, and you keep it in your hands. And then every time you see it, to remember that you want to listen more. It's like a person trying to quit smoking or something. You replace a cigarette with a chewing gum, or you don't go into that pub where you used to smoke because it triggers your smoking. So you use all kinds of these tricks just to remember that I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. And if you do that enough, at some point it'll become second nature. But it's not easy.
Hi, Andrea. I was going to ask, sometimes I'm in a situation where like one person sort of takes control and everybody sort of follows that idea of that person because maybe they have the strongest opinions on the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like if you oppose them, it becomes like personal, where they're targeting you, you know, why do you want to sabotage the idea? Or sometimes like everybody in the room, I think, knows that the idea is not the best idea, but they're just going along with that idea because they just say, oh, we'll just follow this guy. It's easier to just sit back and let them take control of the situation. I just wondered if you sort of had any anything to say about that.
Yep, of course. I have something to say about everything. Hopefully it's useful as well. So actually someone did that experiment was. It's not experiment, it's a story. It's a real business story. I read it in a book, I forget, but it's a real story. It was the board of a company. That was, the CEO came one day and said, why don't we acquire this company? It was like a huge decision, a big company acquiring another big, but not so big company. It was a month-long process of debate, discussion, reviews, due diligence. And they met countless times and they looked at the numbers and they analyzed things. And it all seemed great and everybody seemed to be happy with it until months later, it was time to make the final decision. And the CEO sort of got up, looked out the window and said, I'm not really sure about that. And then everybody started saying that I'm not sure about that either. And I'm not sure about that either. So there's a social effect here that is, I think it's called illusory majority or something like that. Someone says something in a meeting. I feel like I don't agree with that, or I feel like that's wrong, or I feel like they've misinterpreted something. I look around, other people seem okay with it. So I think that maybe I didn't understand something, or maybe I wasn't paying attention, or maybe I just didn't get it, or it's not that important. I'm not gonna say anything. But sometimes many people feel like that, but just nobody says anything. So I think that's the first thing, that sometimes when you feel like that, more people feel like that in the room. And the unanimity that you see is most of the times is not like it looks. So what you can do then is just use assertive communication. So raise your hand, whatever, intervene in a almost intentionally softer way, firm but not aggressive. And use a few phrases like, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with this. I don't necessarily want to directly contradict that. I just have a question, or I have a doubt, or I just thought about this. What if? And give an example or a situation or a scenario or something where you think that idea might not be the best. And basically you're confronting them, but not completely directly, so you don't get into a match like that. And then you can insist on that, and that usually will give some other people the confidence to also say what they have to say. Not all of them, but some of them. And you decide how much you insist on it based on how important it is. Not everything is equally important. Sometimes you will feel that for some things you actually have to stand your ground. Sometimes you may just want to throw a question into the mix and see how they react to it. That is the most safe way to do it. Of course, if that is how I prefer to do it with people that I know and trust, I do it in a much more direct way. But if I want to be as safe as possible and as respectful as possible, that's how I would do it.
Yeah, I was going to say that sometimes people's ideas seem crazy, but they work out really well. It's hard to know sometimes if it's a good idea or a bad idea. But if you become the target if you become the target, then, and you think the idea is better in your head, and you bring it out, your idea isn't actually as good as what people were discussing, it's strange how the group can actually sort of come to a good idea, a profitable idea maybe, that doesn't seem that great when you're discussing it.
Yeah, I think it goes back to that thing. Decision making is not a pure rational process. It's a social process, backed by some rationality and some facts and some things, but it's a social phenomenon. So sometimes if somebody is very confident about something and nobody contradicts them, people may feel that maybe it's not the best idea, but at least he seems like he's willing to own it and go ahead with it. Let's back him up, or let's back her up. So sometimes people go ahead with if there's only one voice, what else are you going to do? You're going to support that voice. And if that person seems confident and capable and able, sometimes even if their idea is not perfect, in the back of your mind, you're thinking subconsciously or not, yes, the idea may not be perfect, but they look like the kind of individual that are going to get through the problems. They'll make something out of it. So they sort of trust the person more than their idea at some point. And that happens quite a lot. And sometimes it happens in a way that's very shallow. That's why we have things like the halo effect. So if somebody dresses very well and looks very professional and speaks very eloquently, and we tend to give them much more credit, even though they may say the same words as someone else. And you also have the reverse halo effect, which is if someone is not dressed so well and maybe their confidence is not so high and maybe their communication skills are not so good, what they say is going to be discounted in people's eyes, because that's just how human nature is, and it's not ideal. But I think all that aside, you have to say something if it's important enough for you. And if it's a team that you work with for a long time, it's not just a random interaction, then you can also have a conversation about this at some point. Like, for example, I don't know if you guys do Agile development, if you do Scrum. That's what you have the retrospectives for, right? In the retrospectives, you talk about stuff like this. Like, you can say something like, hey guys, I feel like I'm not exactly sure how we make decisions, and sometimes I feel like we don't hear enough opinions in our conversations, and what do you think? That's a retrospective kind of conversation to have.
I have a story on this topic, actually. So so a few years ago we had was a developer in the team. My team lead was kind of a bad communicator. He was, and he had this feeling that the thing I'm doing is the one that is correct, and he couldn't even listen to his team. Sometimes he was just turning his back and leaving. Meanwhile, in the middle of a conversation, and it was very hard to work with him because all of us had to follow him on his path, and later. We did in a company level activity just for fun, practicing stuff, and we had to group in small groups, so in 2-3 people, and no one wanted to work with him. So the idea was just to gather some requirements and literally drawing in a paper the idea we got from the requirements, and it ends up that he was the only one that drawing something totally different from what was expected. And then he said in the end, oh, yes, I didn't get the actual idea of the activity and the right requirements. And he recognized in that moment that he didn't understand what was the purpose of the exercise, the purpose of the activity. So imagine this in your daily basis, when you are constantly working in a project and changing to a new project and to another project where you need to gather requirements and more requirements and discuss, and having a person like this that, it's not flexible to listen to the team. And sometimes his idea is totally different, and the team is aware that he's leading, but his idea is not what was supposed to be done. It basically the mood of the team goes down.
Yep.
But you know, like it's very hard for the team to work when having such a bad communication or a leader, let's say.
Sorry.
Kinds of statistics saying that most people leave a job because of their direct boss. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to be a good communicator and say what I'm thinking. I think it's time for a break.
It's perfect timing because I finished the main part, and after the break, I'm going to show you a few things about slightly related to this.
Okay.
Okay. So Helena, are you with yourself for TV? Thank you. Helena, are you ready with the?
Sure, yeah. Okay. So, who wants to win some prizes?
Everyone.
I think it would be really cool if the people who haven't got their video on, if they can show us their lovely faces. So I'll give you a second to do that while I share my screen. Ooh, it's the wheel. So I just wanted to say, before we give any prizes away, the 100 euros worth of Amazon vouchers has been given to us very kindly by Lottoland. So Lottoland's one of our sponsors this month. Okay, so we've got 4 Amazon vouchers. We're going to give away 2 now, and we'll give another 2 away at the end. But it's not going to be as easy as spinning the wheel and your name being selected. If your name comes up, I'd like you to answer one of the 4 questions on the left so that we can get to know you a little bit better. So get ready to unmute your microphone just in case it lands on you. I hope nobody's left the call, but this list of names should be up to date. So I'm going to spin the wheel.
They would do like drums. And then
Justina.
Oh, awesome. Fantastic. But it's not me now.
Justina? It's reset. Don't worry. It was you.
Okay. Okay. So what is my favorite programming language and why? I'm not a programmer, I'm a designer. So I don't have my favorite program language. I like when developers talking to me in the human way, especially. That one is my favorite language. What was your favorite GDevs meetup and why? Oh, I think first one was my favorite one. What I attend, I think it was the most bored one when Kuba had a speech and we couldn't listen to him. We couldn't listen because it was in the how is called this bar?
Was it Bruno's?
Bruno's.
Yeah, Bruno's. Yes, in the Bruno's because it was like eco and something like that. But atmosphere was very, very good. What has been your lockdown project? So
wait, was she intended to answer just one? Helena, you said just one?
Just one, but she can go ahead.
Okay.
The more we know about you, the better.
No, I got opportunities to speak, so I started. Yeah, didn't want to finish. Lockdown project. Oh, I had a free lockdown project. I did actually design for free apps, but the most important was redesign Gibraltar International Bank application. Whoever used that one knows that it's really not easy to use and not really user friendly. So that one was the most amazing thing. And that's it. Okay, I don't need to answer for the 4th one.
I'm really looking forward to this app, by the way, the new app.
Yeah, let's see. You know, from design to really get to to be done, it's a long way.
Okay, thank you so much,
And it's
Justina.
my lucky day today because I don't know if you know the Robert Lewandowski, football player, Polish football player. No, no one? Robert Lewandowski? Lewy?
I think it's famous.
Yeah, what
It's
about
the
him?
most famous one.
I'm programming.
Oh, Aneta. Aneta knows him, yeah? So I got to the job. Yeah. Ah, more of you, yes. So I just finished negotiation contract with his wife today for the product designer of her diet and fitness app. So woo!
Nice.
Ah, nice.
Congrats.
Yeah.
Well done. Big score.
And I won voucher.
Enjoy.
Fantastic. Hope you can treat yourself later. Okay, should we spin the wheel again? Hope everyone's ready. Here we go.
Oh,
Joe.
Joseph.
Joseph, are you there?
Yeah, hello.
Hey.
I'm actually trying to run a droid cam here. Sorry about that. Okay, there's something. Sorry, good afternoon, everyone, or good evening.
Hello.
Right, I have to answer some of these questions. Favorite programming language? I suppose the one I've learned a lot of languages. I've been doing this a while, but I suppose the one I've learned in the last few years that I've enjoyed has been React. And I just found it improved the, web a lot, really. But that's because as I said, I've been programming for about 30 years, so I've seen really bad web stuff as well. My day-to-day programming language is usually C# with some React. So yeah, I think that's probably good enough. Sorry about the lighting. I've just been experimenting with the droid cam. Okay.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Joseph. Guys, those of you that have won a prize, if you just send us either a Facebook message or email to info@jibdevs.com afterwards, then we'll make sure you get your voucher. And we'll do 2 more at the end. Congrats, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for playing.
Actually, I managed to fix all the technical issues, so now I think I can share my screen. It's the only part of the session that's worth sharing anyway, so we haven't missed much in terms of sharing. So what I had before was this slide deck. I think you can see my screen, right?
Yeah.
So I'll send it to you, but it wasn't much. But now I'm going to tell you a little bit about planes and communication and aviation. Because last year I learned to fly a small plane. Actually, this is the actual small plane I did my flying school on. It's a 2-seater, 100 horsepower, ultralight category it's called. It has, it runs with normal gas like any other car. It has very old technology in it. So there's nothing digital other than the radio. It's all like, you pull on this and there's a steel wire going directly to a controlled surface on the wing, and that's how it works. Actually, you guys have an amazing airport in Gibraltar. I visited once. It's an airport I'd love to land on at some point.
You are brave. You are brave.
Yeah.
Not on the windy day. Recommendation.
Yeah.
Well, with a small plane like this, that runway is really big for it, so it will be fine.
I think
so I'll just
in Gibraltar is one of the most dangerous, especially of the wind and the currents that are there.
Yeah, I know. That's why it's nice. it's a nice airport. It's a really interesting airport. It has a relatively short runway. There's that mountain, that wind goes around it and creates some very interesting circular turbulence. It's fascinating. But the thing is that learning this about flying, I learned a lot about communication aviation. And funny enough, it's pretty much the same principles that we use everywhere else. And some of them are very well explained. So this is how it looks, basically, flying a small plane like this. This is me taking off from a grass field. And it's a beautiful day. It was, I think, January of this year, or I don't remember exactly. This is like the real airport right here. It's relatively slow. It's like 150 kilometers an hour, but it's a lot of fun. There's been a lot of crashes, like passenger jet crashes, because of communication, and only because of communication. And there's been a few of them that have been like so obviously about communication, it's ridiculous. Like there's been, there was a famous crash from Korean Airlines in 1992, I think, or something, in Guam, where basically they almost all of them died because the first officer didn't want to contradict the captain. They were coming in for a landing. It was night, it was a storm, there was no visibility. That's fine, they have all the machines and stuff. But the captain, which was also flying at that moment, made a mistake and was a few miles to the left of the runway. So he was like coming in for a landing, but a few kilometers to the left. So going straight towards the mountain. And the first officer realized that, I think 4 or 5 minutes before it happened. But because of receiver accountability and indirect communication, he kept saying things like, Captain, sir, isn't the radar weather useful? And that was a hint for the captain to look on the radar and see the mountain. But the captain was tired and he didn't get it. So he's like, yeah, it's useful. We have the transcript from this. They recovered the voice recorders. And then, I don't know, 30 seconds more pass and the first officer says something like, it's good on a day like this to double check whatever, right? And the captain is like, yeah, it's good to double check. And 2 or 3 things like that until it was basically too late. So that first officer was more afraid of contradicting his captain than flying into a mountain until the very seconds of flying into that mountain. And that has happened more than once. And there's a whole bunch of incidents that have happened that are less, that not as obvious as this, but it's still bad communication. So there's a famous example in the United States in the 70s or something. They had a minor issue. The landing gear wouldn't come down. That's a minor issue. You can handle that. You can land without the wheel. And they got so focused on solving the problem, like over solving the problem. Let's do all the checklists. Let's try this. Let's try that. Let's tell the passengers what happened. Let's tell them again. Let's tell them one more time. Let's talk to the control tower. Let's do this. Let's do that. While they were holding, that they forgot to look at how much fuel they had, and they ran out of fuel. Trying to solve a minor problem because they were so task focused. They had that tunnel vision. And in aviation, they call it get there-itis. Like, I have to get there. I have to get there no matter what. And you forget you have other options and you don't interpret information accurately anymore. And that's why when you have 2 pilots, there's always 2 different roles. Like you have the pilot flying and the pilot monitoring. And the pilot flying is flying and the pilot monitoring is sort of looking at the bigger picture. And there's an entire theory about this, which is called CRM. Crew resource management. It started being developed at a workshop held by NASA in 80-something after that huge crash in Tenerife, which again happened because of communication. So there was fog in Tenerife, and because of that, they landed in the Gran Canaries airport. All planes that were supposed to go to Tenerife, it was foggy in Gran Canaries as well. They landed, and there was a KLM airplane that needed to go back to Amsterdam, and the captain had 20-something more minutes before he couldn't fly anymore because they have that window where after which they absolutely have to rest. So if the flight would be delayed by 20-something minutes more, he would have to stay the whole night and he wouldn't be able to get home that night and so on. The captain was very senior. He was the chief pilot actually of KLM. And he was very aggressive, like, we need to go, talking to the tower, we need to go. He was very rushed, he misunderstood some things, he made some communication errors, the other more junior pilots couldn't convince him, and basically he took off in fog and hit straight a Pan Am flight that was where it should have been, crossing the runway, and I think almost 600 people died in there. And off the back of that, NASA held this workshop, and crew resource communication came about, and it's a way to communicate, including assertively. So for example, they have this best practices right here. So how do you bring up a topic? So you think something is a problem, and the other person or the other people don't think it's a problem. Nobody seems to be seeing it, but you think it's a problem. You're not 100% sure it's a problem, maybe, but you're sure enough you want to bring it up. So this is how they should be talking in a cockpit. So you start up with an opening or attention getter. Like you address someone like, hey, Michael, hey, Mary, or whatever. So they know you're talking to them. You state your concern, state the problem as you see it, and you state 8 solutions. It's a bit of a 3-act structure in a way, assertive communication. And at the end, you obtain the agreement or the buy-in. So it's like that action. Are you okay? Are you not okay? Do you want to do this? Are you going to do it? Should I do it? So this kind of clear communication is really important. And I just wanted to give you that example. It's very interesting in aviation. So for example, this is an aviation map of the area where I live. I live here. I take off from here. In this pink half circle or orange what's called a controlled airspace, because there's an airport here. So in this area, I have to ask for permission. Can I take off? Can I go left? Can I be at this altitude and so on? Once I get out, it's called free space, class G space. And I'm not on the radio with these guys anymore. I'm on the radio with other guys, and they're called an information service. And that's exactly what they do. They give you information. They cannot tell you what to do. So for example, you might be flying around here and they tell you that be advised that there's military exercises, they're flying in this area, this altitude, doing whatever. And if you ask them, okay, so what should I do? Or is that a problem or not? They're gonna reply like, I cannot tell you that. I'm just giving information. So it's again very important to have very clear ownership. Who is responsible for communicating what and who is responsible for deciding what? And I just think there's a whole bunch of lessons we can learn from aviation when it comes to communication. This is another plane I flew during the school in a different part of the country.
Oops. I think we lost Andrei.
Yeah.
And I was very proud of the internet in Romania.
He's decided he wants to go flying, hasn't he?
He flew away, huh? No, but I mean, we still can see his screen.
Yeah.
And his camera seems to be on, still sort of should be transmitting, so something else as well. Maybe, yeah. In the meantime, I will share actually, it was like 2 days ago, probably, I accidentally stumbled upon one YouTube video about actually talking about the same thing in Lead Dev conference about the crew resource management. And he more elaborates on the topic of the plane crashes, so it's like very interesting. But at the end, he makes the same point about the communication and leadership in the one. So I think I more like the video about because it was telling about the plane crash than about the actual leadership topic, but still, I mean, it's from developer conference.
This video is for watching later, right?
What?
The video you pasted is for watching later, no?
Yeah, of course not now. We still hope that Andrei will come back online. But it's very weird. I never seen this type of crash of Zoom, right?
Can we debug the Zoom, like to see what's the issue with the?
Oh look, he's sharing his screen, and I think he's struggling maybe with the permissions.
Or with the audio.
You see his mouse is moving, right?
Yeah, he's online.
And maybe he can hear us. Now,
Maybe.
Yeah, his video now is gone.
That proved he could hear you.
Oh yeah, that's actually yeah.
Switch it off and switch it back on again.
That's the way.
Oh,
here it is.
haven't met. Unmute, yeah.
I didn't realize because I could see you, I could hear you, but my camera was off, so you couldn't see or hear me. So I didn't realize there was an issue. I was just, so I don't know where it cut off, but at some point I said that that's all I have. And now if you have any questions or if you want to talk about anything, I'll be happy to do it. But I don't know if I cut off before that.
I think where you left was when you said about communication. When you enter a different zone, you have a different communication. Yep. Some other guys are only responsible for giving information, and this should be.
Yes, that was the last thing. I mean, the key point is accountability again. Who's responsible for what? And that's fortunately very clear in aviation, and that's why aviation is really safe. One of the reasons. There's a bunch of other reasons as well, but one of the reasons. So these days in civil aviation, so passenger airlines, the machines are very safe. The planes are very good. So I think 70% or something of all accidents happens because of human error. Humans are now the weakest link in the chain. Have been for a while in most situations. So this kind of communication and assertiveness and collaboration is really important. And I think they have researched that pretty well, and we can learn from what they did. And being very clear about who needs to decide what is one of the things. There was a crash in Switzerland at some point. Again, cultural difference. There was just after the breakdown of the Soviet Union, there was a Russian plane a charter coming to Sweden to land, was bringing some athletes of some sort. I don't remember which sport. And he was talking to the control tower. And in the Soviet Union, they were used to the control tower having authority over the plane. Like you could tell the captain what to do. In the rest of the world, it was basically the captain had the final decision. So the control tower in Switzerland would sort of tell them things, but there would be more information like recommendation, and the captain would understand this, I have to do this. And that led to a mid-air collision with another aircraft, I think, just because of that different assumption about how to interpret what the other guy is saying, because he interpreted not as just some information, but as a mandatory thing to do.
That's very interesting for me to see how you took like the information from one domain and apply it to a different domain. I think this is like a sign of innovation.
Thank you. We can all do that. We do it all the time.
Andrei, I have no
follow-up. I'm done. If you have any questions, please.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up actually about the crew resource management. I think, yeah, there are a lot of things which teamwork can benefit from, military, from sort of airspace as well, these sort of areas which are developed. Have you read any more deeper resources about that crew resource management, any book to recommend on this subject? Because I actually, literally this week, I've accidentally stumbled upon on very similar video about crew resource management. Just wanted to think if you have any recommendations where to dig deeper into it.
I haven't read any book.
Turn the ship around. It's exactly about this.
What?
Turn the ship around. It's a very good book about leadership. I think
In
it
military
was
context, yeah.
a submarine, the context.
So specifically about crew resource management, I haven't read any book. I read the actual manuals that I needed to get my license. I read the Oxford Aviation private pilot license manuals, and I read the FAA manuals, and I read the Romanian manuals, and a whole bunch of articles and stuff. But I don't have one thing to recommend about it, unfortunately. But I'll think about it, and I'll send you guys a message if I find anything useful.
And you, at the beginning, you mentioned some book. I'm thinking, was it related anyhow? Okay, it doesn't matter.
Extreme Ownership. It's written by a guy called Jocko Wilkins. So it's written by a bunch of former Navy SEALs, and it's a really good book. I really like it. Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. It's a short book. It's a clear book. It has some stories about their war in Afghanistan or whatever, but it's not about that. It's about ownership, and it's really interesting to see, like you were saying, that it's a completely different world. So they're soldiers in a war, and it's a completely different. You would imagine that everything is different there because there's all that hierarchy and rules and uniforms and guns, but basically it's the same things. It's the same fundamental things about people, about understanding, about motivation, about organizing themselves, about being clear, about. So I really recommend that book. It's one of my favorite leadership books, actually. Extreme Ownership.
Yeah, so I think I'm as well as a relatively young leader as well. I think I'm still struggling in my journey into understanding, what is maybe the clear path between a lot of. If you look at the military, for example, everyone has a perception like, no, military is a rigidity, structure. It's like no creativity, and all the arguments in the development world, people are saying, no, we are more creative, we are different. This is no place for military, sort of training in this area. What do you think about it?
So I think there's a lot we can learn from them. I'm not saying we should all become soldiers, but for example, Jocko has a saying, and I think that saying is true to a large degree. He says that discipline is freedom. So, for example, you talk about being creative. What does it mean to be creative? I try to be creative. But if I just come to my office and I have nothing on my mind, they're like, let's be creative now. Let's put on some music, drink a beer, and be creative. It doesn't really work like that. I'm more creative when I set some boundaries for myself. Like I'm trying to do something, or I'm trying to achieve something, or I'm prototyping something. And I set some deadlines for myself, even if it's just for myself. I'm more creative having some kind of a discipline than not having any discipline. Of course, I prefer that discipline to be my own discipline or a discipline I can agree with. I don't like when people impose things, of course. I do agree with that. So I think this idea that you're best when you have no constraints, I don't think it's true. I think I don't like enforced constraints, but I think constraining yourself temporarily makes you better for something. And I think we can learn that from the military. And the way these guys operate is fascinating. I mean, especially, I don't know about all the armies, but these guys in the Navy SEALs are like one of the elite troops, and they're very well trained. And there's a lot of autonomy in there. There's a lot of quick decision making. There's a lot of flexibility. It's not about following orders rigidly. There's no such thing. So when you deal with those concepts and it's life and death, I think it's interesting to see how they handle it. And another thing Jocko says that I like is, leadership is jujitsu, he says. Jiu-jitsu is one of these martial arts where it's very, in a way, disorganized. Like they push and pull each other. It doesn't look nice. And what he means is like leadership, you don't have a clear, perfect answer. Like this is the way. You sort of have to get into the mud and start struggling. And you do something and it works, and you do something and it doesn't work, and you try something else and you make a mistake and you learn. And it's a contact sport. You don't do leadership in your ivory tower. You do it in the trenches. So I told you I can talk a lot, but I agree with you. I think there's a lot
that's very nice.
You can learn from the military.
I think you reiterated the very nice point, which I liked at the beginning, is that we developer, again, my background is developer. Yeah, we are used to very much cleaner and more defined solutions. And whenever you step into the world of leadership, and yeah, actually there's people, and people are not sort of that much constrained.
I have a question, guys. You've already touched this like border between aviation, military, development, but I would like to ask: have you actually found out any correlation between how strict we are at work, like let's say in development, because we got used to have like fun, and that makes us more creative, isn't it? How does it work? Do we have in the aviation fun, and is the fun the main, like actually absent of fun in the aviation, if it's true, makes it more safe and more like smooth, or it's not like that? If you understand my question, but I might need to rephrase it.
So my opinion is that you have different objectives in civil aviation. Like the captain and the first officer of a Ryanair transporting passengers from London to Gibraltar, their job is not to innovate. It's from the opposite, from the contrary. They should not innovate anything. So they should be as reliable as possible, as consistent as possible, as repeatable as possible. And given that that is their objective, they follow a lot of procedures, and everything is basically, there's a procedure about everything. And there's a degree of flexibility, of course. And if it becomes an emergency, you do what you have to do. But in normal non-emergency flying, there's no moment where the captain or the first officer of a passenger jet is going to look like, why don't you go that way? Or why don't you do that? There's no question like that. It's all very well understood somehow. When you fly for fun, like I fly for fun, yeah, it's a lot of fun, but I take it really seriously. So I really do, because otherwise you can die. And there's people that died here in my city flying their little planes because they made stupid mistakes, and they made those mistakes. They had bad habits for years, nothing happened, and one day it happened, and because of their bad habits and they're not following the procedures, they died. When it comes to creativity, I think I get into a motivation conversation, what motivates us to be creative and productive and interesting and whatever. And I think motivation is overrated. It's my personal opinion. I think a lot of people talk about motivation, but they talk about it in almost a mystical way. Like you wake up and you feel motivated somehow. Nobody knows why. It's like magic. And if you do, you do. If you don't, you don't. I like motivation, but I prefer other things to complement it. So for example, one of my favorite books ever is a book called Meditations by a guy called Marcus Aurelius. It's a Stoic philosopher. Happened to be an emperor as well. That's his second job, the less important job he had. And there's also some modern concepts about grit and about growth mindset. So whatever I do, no matter how much I like that, there will be shitty parts. There will be difficult parts. There will be days when I don't want to work. There will be moments where I don't want to be there. And if I wait to be motivated, whatever that means, I'm not going to do anything. So I believe that I have to get the job done. And of course, if the situation is so bad that I don't want to be there, I leave that place and I go somewhere else. But while I'm there, I don't want to play. I want to do things. And I personally was never really much interested in these games and things and stuff. That if people like them, I don't mind, but I prefer discipline for myself.
But having discipline, does it does it mean that no jokes, very strict, serious?
Oh,
or
no, I'm not. Sorry, I'm excited about the topic and I accidentally interrupted you. I apologize.
Can you repeat the question?
Well, the question was like, by mean the discipline, does it mean that there is no jokes, no like just formal conversation, or it's still?
No. So I believe in doing serious things without taking yourself too seriously. So I'm a very informal person, and I curse like a sailor, and I'm okay with all of that. But it's not about the appearance. It's like wearing a suit and tie and being serious. I personally don't care about that. But when we want to do something, let's do that something. Oh, make a joke, I don't know, but let's focus on, that's why we're here, to do something. But I'm not, I don't believe in I think people that take themselves too seriously, it's a trap. So you speak like you're saying the most important thing ever. We all say stupid things, we all make mistakes. So I don't take myself too seriously. Even sometimes I get excited and I talk about stuff, and maybe after some time I realize I said something completely wrong, and that's okay. I'll just do it better next time. So, for example, recently I had a slight challenge because one of my clients is a German company, and in Germany they routinely address each other with Mr. Like if it's more an older person or a more senior person, like you are colleagues and I would be calling you Mr. Mikhail, like literally. And that's weird to me, and I didn't want to do that. So I want to see how that works when you don't do that. But no, the quick answer is no. It's not about the formalities. It's about just let's do it. Let's do it. Let's get the job done.
Is it like separating the ego from the task at hand kind of thing? I mean, it's like you say, people have to own, you have to take responsibility for your suggestions and decisions, but people in the group should also respect that you're only trying to take decisions to further the product or the thing that you're trying to create. It's not like an ego battle between people.
I think that's really important. So I think one of the important things you need in a team is people to be honest with themselves. Like, who am I? What am I good at? What am I not good at? That doesn't mean I cannot get better at something in the future. What do I like to do? What I don't like to do? How can I contribute to this thing? And we're all adults. We're here. So if we're here, why not do something useful? I mean, to me, it's that simple. So sometimes you see these, so I consult a lot, and sometimes people invite me in their companies and I go and sit in a meeting and I look at people, how they talk. You hear people talking without talking. So you feel there's an issue there somewhere, like this guy doesn't like that girl, or that girl doesn't like this guy, or he doesn't like him, or there's something where he did something 6 months ago, or maybe, but they don't talk about that. They talk about something else. They make up arguments and they make up interesting looking sentences and sophisticated looking analysis, and they come up with PowerPoints and they talk about everything but the elephant in the room, sort of. And that's a fake conversation, and that's people that are not being honest with themselves. Once you're honest with yourself and with the others, and Google came up with this, I don't know if Google, but Google made it popular, this concept of psychological safety. So you are in a team and you feel safe with being yourself in that team. What does that mean? That means that you can have your style, you can have your personality. If you say something stupid, you have the confidence that your teammates are going to contradict you. They may even have a quick laugh, but it's going to be friendly. They're not going to be mean with you and talk about that for 6 months. So you feel comfortable just being yourself and contributing. And I think if you get that in a team, that's really important. And sometimes you get all kinds of people. Most people don't do this, I think, they're afraid in a way. The education system didn't teach them, family maybe didn't taught them, whatever, and they don't know they can do it. They don't know they can be direct and honest in themselves. Some people actually want to play a game, like they want to play the political game. They want to get the promotion. They want to get the the glory. Some people are real assholes. I mean, not a lot of them. I've met a handful of psychopaths in my career so far, like complete assholes, but they're very few, like 1 in 100, 1 in 200s. Some people just don't know how to communicate. Some people get angry easily. But once you get a team where people trust each other, they can all relax a little bit and feel better and be better.
So what I'm hearing is that it's also important to try to understand why a person behaves like he or she behaves and try to fix that root cause.
Of course. So for example, I think that 90% of the time people are angry about something, they're not angry about that something. So I always tell this to people that are leaders that manage other people. So you have someone you're managing and that someone comes to you and says something like, I absolutely hate the sprint planning meeting. It's a shitty meeting, we're wasting time, it's useless. I don't want to be part of that meeting, which may be the case, but sometimes the real reason, they may not even be aware of it, is that they have a teammate that always interrupts them and bullies them in that meeting, and they don't feel nice at all being in that meeting. And it's a stressful situation to be in that meeting, but they're not mature enough or confident enough or whatever to say it. So they say something else, like they say Scrum sucks, this meeting is useless, let's not do this meeting. But this is not the problem. They have nothing against Scrum. I'm just taking an example. They have a particular issue. And to get to that issue, sometimes you just need to listen to them and not rush to solving the problem. Because another thing that happens when you treat people like children, they behave like children. So if they come to you with a problem and immediately you're like, let me fix your problem, you're treating them like kids. And they get used to be treated like kids. And it happens to all of us. So treat them like adults. Like ask them, okay, so what do you want me to do about it? What do you want to do about it?
I'm wondering if you have any ideas for a team that it's not used to bringing these issues up and talking clear and direct and addressing the root cause. If you have any ideas how to improve that in the team?
Yep, there's many ways, but I think the easiest one would be, so for example, I don't know, do you follow any particular development methodology like Scrum or Kanban or whatever?
Yeah.
Okay, so use that. So for example, it's easier to bring something up when you can refer to something. So for example, you can say, you know what, in this Agile thing, there's this concept of a retrospective meeting where we talk about how we work as a team. We haven't had a retrospective in a long time, let's have one. And then you find an article somewhere, and you can find whatever article you want. And you say, I found this article written by Joanne something that says, here's a way to organize retrospectives. And it's a particular way, I don't know, getting feedback from people or whatever. And you find a way to organize it that is most likely to bring up those issues. And then you go with a proposal to whoever you need to convince about this, and you say, let's have a retrospective. Retrospectives are recommended in Agile, and here's a way to make a retrospective. This person that knows what they're talking about gave us a template, let's follow that template. It's a much easier way to say, because it's not like I want this. It's here's the best practice from the industry, let's do that. And that's one way to do it. Of course, you can also be very direct and very blunt, and I like that anytime I see it, but I know it's difficult sometimes, so I'm giving you easier options.
Thank you. As well, maybe I would like to hear your opinion regarding maybe individuals and teams, individual goals or individual accountability and mutual accountability and shared goals for a team. So where are you with that? What's your opinion on that?
I think it's a delicate mix. I think they're both very good ideas. Both of them can be misinterpreted very easily. So if you go to extremes, they're both bad. So if you only talk about individual accountability, so if you say, you individual X, you need to deliver this, and if you don't, no bonuses for you, then of course you're missing out that life is complicated, that sometimes you depend on things out of your control and so on. However, if you remove that completely and you say nobody is quite accountable for anything and it's sort of a collective thing, you may end up with a different kind of problem. So I am a strong believer in individual accountability. I apply that with myself. I am also a strong believer in team accountability, in the sense that if I'm part of a team and if I see a colleague in a team doing something that's going to affect the team, but not necessarily me personally, I still need to say something about it, because what affects the team affects me if it does affect me personally. So I believe in that kind of collective responsibility. I don't believe you cannot say, for example, if you have some developers and some testers and some architects and some business analysts working on a big project, and the project is a failure, but the business analysts go and have a beer because they wrote beautiful requirements. That's silly. I mean, you cannot say you won anything in that way. So of course, we need some kind of collective accountability in the sense that what is the end goal of what we're doing here. But I also believe in individual accountability. I think nothing happens without it. Ideally, it would be self-driven and people would self-volunteer and it's not imposed, but I do believe in individual accountability. I don't believe in trying to come up with a lot of very detailed KPIs and objectives at the individual level, because they get artificial really quickly. Like you know those kind of things. Like we want all our developers to be creative. How do we measure that? They need to have 3 presentations a quarter. And then, okay, you'll have 3 presentations a quarter. Are they useful? Are they not useful? Nobody knows, but you had 3 presentations a quarter. So if you turn into one of those artificially quantifiable targets, it's not necessarily useful, but the idea that you want everyone to feel accountable, I think is great.
Mm.
I had the goal of 3 innovations per year. It doesn't matter what kind of innovation, but 3 innovations per year.
So we have that with traffic cops in Romania. So somebody at some point thought about some smart idea like we should have fewer traffic accidents. Sounds brilliant. Okay, how do we measure that? So I guess if we give out a lot of fines, then maybe we discourage people from driving too fast. So you cascade that down, and then at the actual policeman level, they have targets. They need to find a number of drivers. So that changes their behavior. And instead of actually being proactive, and they go to where they are more likely to give most fines, like somewhere in the middle of nowhere with a speed restriction that's not clearly visible, where they will catch most people over the speed limit, but they're not preventing anything. They're just meeting their target. So targets can drive behavior in very bad ways if you're not careful with them.
If you would have, let's say, challenge that you need to tackle, and you'll have a team, but the challenge is like very complex, and it cannot be achieved only by one person. So those people would need to work together. In this case, what's your view on the individual accountability or team? Is it that each person takes one part and they only look at that part, or is it that they all together need to achieve the challenge, or they all succeed together, or they all fail together?
I think it depends on the specific of the challenge and the skills that people have. So for example, let me give you 2 examples. If you have a team and someone is very good with some technology but not good with other technology, and some other one is good with the other technology, I would try to make sure that we all understand what we're trying to do together. So together we're trying to build this thing, but you're going to build this part, I'm going to build this part, you're going to build this part. And then we can separate and build it, but integrate frequently. And by integration, I don't mean just technically. Integrate as in let's communicate and let's understand where we are and what's happening and what's working and what's not working. And also have the bigger goal in mind, because if you don't know what's happening, you just have a little part and you don't know. Sometimes it's very great to do this kind of swarming techniques, like you get everyone. So for example, when you have an event, you organize an event, it's great to have everyone doing something around there. Sometimes you can all work at the same thing at the same time. but most of the times I think not. So swarming is, I don't know, it's one of these agile techniques. Like it's a bit of peer programming on steroids. Like swarming is like many people working on the same thing at the same time. So that's an example.
And you were just dragged into my and Amalia's disagreement about teamwork versus personal accountabilities.
No, I sensed that I'm a proxy in a conversation, but I don't mind that.
Other curiosity which I have, just to get you out of this, maybe our question, which we cannot decide yet, trust and building the trust. This is quite often a very curious thing. I think the sentence which was told previously was when you hire a team and everyone has a trust, right? Or everyone has a trust in the team. Oh, do you feel that you can touch that topic more broadly? I mean, how to regain trust, how to improve trust, how to change it, especially in a situation when we're talking about the team against the stakeholders or bigger scope. Mm-hmm. How do you think?
So I think there's two kinds of trust.
Mm-hmm.
The simpler kind of trust is called predictive trust. So I trust your skills. Mm-hmm. I trust that you are able to do certain tasks in a certain way. I can predict your performance. The more delicate kind of trust is I trust you to be on my side and have my back and not betray me and be on my side. That doesn't mean accepting all the stupid things I do, but it means at least being honest with me and talk to me before talking to anyone else. Mm-hmm. The way to gain trust, the best way to gain trust is, of course, working together and going through difficult situations and so on. That builds a lot of trust. But if you're in a situation like this, like you have a team and have a group of stakeholders, or you have a department that's not getting along with other departments, I think you need a workshop-like event. You need to organize a workshop about how do you want to work together, what are you trying to achieve. Of course, make it honest, don't make it corporate, but mm-hmm. I think you need that. And that's what I do in this kind of situation. So I had an example with, I was consulting a company that had a delivery center in Iași and a sales force in Amsterdam. And there was mm-hmm. a very bad relationship between the salespeople in Amsterdam and the delivery people in Iași. And everybody had their points and they're always doing this and they're always doing that. So we actually got together in a cabin somewhere in the mountains and we went through, I provided the framework like, okay, what are you trying to do? What are the fundamental ways in which you operate? Who needs to decide what? What are you trying to achieve? And then I basically, my job was to bring out conflict. So to ask the questions and to encourage the conversations that would lead to conflict. Conflict is great. Mm-hmm. Like Jeff Bezos from Amazon, he says, if I'm ever in a meeting where we're not arguing, then either we're not discussing important things or we're not being honest. Because if we're discussing important things and we're being honest, then obviously we must have different opinions about something, right? So disagreement is fine if you can have it in a way that's not personal and not about ego. But I think you need, when you have these kind of situations, you need to bring people together, or at least in a Zoom call, and say, okay, we are one team. What are we trying to achieve here? Let's start from scratch. Let's repeat the basic mission, the basic fundamentals, who does what. And
so sort of
sometimes it works magically. Mm-hmm. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering, so basically your point of goal of that workshop in the cabin was sort of review and reiterate or maybe refine the expectations for each other, or was it like different?
It was going, so for example, what it was, they already had preconceptions about each other, mm-hmm. and they already had a lot of history, and they all mm-hmm. made mistakes to each other. So now it was always like, whenever a salesperson in Amsterdam came with an opportunity, always a reaction from Iași was, again, an unqualified lead, unrealistic expectations, they're mm-hmm. not doing their job. And the reaction from Amsterdam was always, oh, those difficult people that want everything to be 100% certain, they don't understand the real world. And they couldn't break through that. They would feed itself. And we were just, okay, let's stop that. Let's go 5 steps back. What's happening? What are you trying to do? How is it supposed to work? Any issues? Anyone has anything to say? So So to break that cycle of.
So basically, it was still the person-to-person sort of level, personal conflict relationship kind of.
There was a mix. There were particular individuals that were particularly difficult.
Mm-hmm.
There was also like this group thing, like the Amsterdam team and the Ash team.
Mm-hmm.
There were
yeah,
all kinds of it, all a lot, a combination. Yeah. This in-group versus us versus them is the easiest thing ever to happen. So it's testers never know, and developers know, or developers don't know, and testers know, and it's always like they don't understand anything and they want impossible things from us. It's very easy to get into this kind of mentality if you're not careful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Welcome.
Do you have you follow up after that workshop?
Yes, the follow-up was that they fired 3 guys from the Amsterdam team because they were actually unknown to the people in Yash. They were actually really hard to get through. But also the people in Yash changed some of their habits. There was a change in the team in Yash as well. So the management team in Yash changed as well, completely, almost completely, like the leader of the team and half of the team, of the leadership team. So basically there were a bunch of changes in people, and then some people changed their attitudes, and it got better.
Those effects or actions sound very in line with what you said, your duty is to the team and not to individual people's.
Yep.
Gotta do
You have a duty to individuals people, but your greater duty is for the whole team. And that means that if you have someone, for example, who is not performing, you have a duty to help them, teach them, guide them, be patient with them. But if they cannot perform, at the end of the day, after a reasonable amount of effort, they are keeping the team back, and then you have to prioritize the team, and you have to give up that person.
Mm-hmm.
As well, let him to find a place where he might perform.
Yep. It's that sounds like bullshit, but it's actually true most of the times. I mean, if you're in a place where you're not succeeding, it's difficult to accept that, and it's difficult to have to leave or be fired. But it may be better for you in the end to go to somewhere where you can actually be valued and contribute. And I actually really believe that. I mean, I'm not just saying it. I know a lot of people that were terrible in certain contexts, and they went to a different company or a different kind of team or a different kind of culture, and they were really good and liked and appreciated, and they had very good careers.
I've seen the same.
Okay, are there any other questions for Andrei? No?
If not, I will give you a ping when I fly to Gibraltar someday. It won't be this year. I don't even have a plane, but
Please do that.
I have a very nice memory of Gibraltar. Well, close to Gibraltar, there's a place called Rio Jara. I don't know if it's a well-known place.
Yeah. Camping
So I
space.
camped in there. Exactly, I camped there, and that's huge beach with wind kites and horses, and you can see Africa on the other side. And it's one of my most favorite travel memories ever in any place. That night and day I stayed in a tent in Rio Jara.
So whenever the travel restrictions are lifted, you are invited here, and please ping us.
If you will plan to
I'm
travel,
looking forward.
Please try to travel at the last week of the month. You know, because the last Thursday of the month we have Gibraltar.
Okay.
Yeah, so we might even find some free beers for you. You know, like if you manage to come over. Last week of the month.
I am serious about that. I hope things get back to some kind of a normal, and I would really like to come and see. So I will keep that in mind.
Cool.
I can offer free accommodation. Just
Much appreciated, because I hear there's not a lot of space in Gibraltar. It's a tiny place. with a lot of people.
Not really in Gibraltar, but we can find something maybe.
Thank you so much, Andrei, for accepting my
you guys
and for spending time with us and offering your opinion and expertise. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. Thank you for the invitation, and have a great evening.
Thank you. Maybe we can don't go away. Maybe we
don't
can
go.
Okay.
To prices left.
Okay.
Ready to start the wheel.
Yeah, can you share your screen?
I've updated the wheel, so now you have much more chances to win. Only the people that are left. So you all know the rules already, so I'm just going to spin it. Ooh, Robin, so close. Agatha. Agatha, are you still here?
I am still here. Hello.
Hey.
Yeah, so I can actually answer what was your favorite GBDevs meetup and why. This is my first one, so that's nice and easy. I usually found, because I'm not a developer, I found that some of them were, at least the topics sound super technical. And this one, when Amaria posted, I was like, oh, that's right, up my street, and it was amazing. Thank you so much. It was brilliant.
Thank you for coming, Agatha. Okay, and we have another. Adam. Are you there, Adam?
Yeah.
Very excited.
Take that as a yes then, shall we? And a rave.
Can we skip the question maybe?
Yeah, because
Let's give you the
two different computers.
Can do it in writing maybe? No offense, Adam.
What's my favorite programming language? I don't have one. I hate every one of them. I'm still waiting for someone to invent something that will be really for me. So for example, I use link instead of join. It will be still okay. You don't have the coffee today, so it still counts. And favorite day meetups, it was one about a presentation because it was just a professional doing the thing. Lockdown project, I really didn't have any. I lost a lot. I have a new one. It's pretty cool. And from this meetup, I really like, I've heard about it so many times, but it's very easy to forget that it's not always good to nod your head. You just have to reaffirm the person you are talking to that you actually understand.
Excellent.
Very nice learning.
I suppose a good question to ask would really be, what are you going to spend your money on?
Oh, yeah.
I just give it to my girlfriend. I didn't use Amazon vouchers.
Oh dear.
So congrats, Isa. You just won a voucher.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay. So again, thank you everyone for coming, and thank you, Andrei, as well. Again, this was very interesting. And probably in the following days we'll be posting the recording, and yeah, we'll let you know. Have a nice evening.
You too.
On the new website,
Thank
right?
you so much again for inviting me.
Get the slides, and we can get all the content on the new website.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Bye bye. See you guys.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye.